Well, it wasn't live.
Oh,
Good
wait,
evening,
wait, wait,
everybody.
wait. You just ended it. No, we're good. Bye, everybody.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another Poultry Keepers 360 Live. We're happy to have you with us tonight. And tonight, we're going to be talking about stress in our birds and what it can cause. And we're particularly going to be focusing on heat stress. So, coming up shortly, we will get right to the subject. As promised, we're going to be covering heat stress tonight. Jeff is with us. John Gunnerman is here. Myself here in and out. We've got some things going on tonight. But he's going to be sharing with us tonight. Uh, let's start off by talking about heat stress because I think that's
All right, Rip. I'm coming on to tell you to bring your microphone to your face.
okay. Is that better? She has escaped.
That's much better.
At any rate, we're going to be talking about heat stress tonight, and uh, that's something a lot of us are dealing with. I know we have had some horrible temperatures down here in Florida already. We've had about 3 weeks where we had temperatures very frequently in the plus 100-degree range. The last couple of days have been tolerable because we've had cloudy days, but before that, it's been rather miserable. Folks out in Texas and Oklahoma out there are really, really suffering, as are their birds. So let's get right to it, shall we? Effects of heat stress, what it can do for our birds or to our birds. When we get hot weather, the birds are suffering. The feed intake drops, the egg production drops, the egg weight decreases, the shell quality decreases, the albumin height or the egg white height decreases. They're drinking a lot of water, trying to stay hydrated, trying to keep cool, and all that water intake will affect the albumin height. Their growth rate slows. I know I've got some young reds now, and it's really, really bad on them. They just kind of sit around and mope, and they don't eat much, and they don't grow much. So um, maybe when cool weather comes, it'll pick back up, and they'll get with the program. We can see an increase in mortality, especially when we have really severe cases of heat stress. Cannibalism can increase. Uh, the suppression in the immune system goes up. Uh, and one thing a lot of folks don't realize that it can also affect hatchability and fertility, especially in roosters. Uh, Although I think most of us are probably done hatching by this point, I know we've still got some diehards who live further north and aren't quite as impacted with the heat that are not having those problems. Down below that, with production losses from heat stress, uh, it's going to depend a lot on the maximum temperature to which our flock is exposed. I'm not going to get in. Jeff's going to. I know he's going to address what we do to overcome that. Uh, but the high temperatures, the duration of the high temperatures, the rate of temperature change, and the relative humidity. We've here in Florida we have a real problem with humidity. Yesterday, the humidity was actually higher than the temperature, and that's not all that uncommon. But Jeff, what can we do to uh, sort of help our birds get through this heat stress?
Yeah, just looking at the top slide or the top, stuff up there, look, that feed intake is going to go down. So, we've talked about it in previous episodes where um, birds eat for their calorie need every day. And so when it gets hot, they require less calories. That's why we had that heat feed, that temperature chart that, how much bird needs to eat and what the protein should be. So people that are still actually trying to produce eggs for hatching or table eggs or whatever, in Florida, um, all of my customers are on a 20% protein layer feed in the summer. And we pretty much start that by tax day, somewhere around April 15th, 1st of May. And we stay on that till mid-November. So you're almost looking at tax day through Thanksgiving. Same thing in Texas, Oklahoma, all of the hotter states, higher humidity. And instead of looking at temperature, we, just like they do for us, we need to look at that heat index. You know, what is that feel like temperature? What is that index number? Because they're feeling it too. You know, when the humidity goes up and the temperature goes up, that's the number that actually matters to the chicken. It's not just heat, and it's not just humidity. It's a combination.
Right.
But, you know, to make a good size egg, you got to get 21 grams, not percent. So people need to hear me. I need to get 21 grams of protein in a chicken to produce a large egg. Okay. So if we don't get them, then we're not going to get decent egg.
I got a quick question. Last time I was in our local big box feed store here, I about the only thing I could find in the way of a layer was 16 or 17%.
Yep.
Is it possible you could switch them back to a starter to raise that protein up if you
Right.
can't find something?
No, you can absolutely move them back to like a 20 to 22 starter, and then hand at the oyster shell, you know, for the calcium part of it, and they'll do fine. So, you know, where people can't access those higher quality, you know, 19, 20% protein feeds, that's exactly what we do. You know, we go find something in the right protein range, hopefully with the right amino acid levels, and then we add the calcium separately, and it works. You know, I mean, it gets you through.
I was so thankful when we finally got somebody carrying that Triple M farm speeds down here. That stuff has made a huge difference, and I don't have that problem or that concern when we deal with heat, trying to find a higher quality protein. It just was not available here in this area.
No, it wasn't. I mean, you know, it was for a little while, then it wasn't for, you know, a couple years,
Right.
and then, you know, Caleb started bringing it back in again down there at Bergen Farms. You know, because he wanted it for himself. You know, I mean, Caleb called me and said, "Hey, I need good breeder feed for my turkeys." So I made him formulas, and he started working it out to bring it in from Triple M Farms. And I said, "You know, why don't you make this available for other people in your area?" I can do that. Of course, you know, Caleb's always pretty positive, and
Right.
You know, so wish there was more people like that who can bring it in. You know, turn it
That's
and
the
share
truth.
it.
You know, he's bringing in a good quality feed, and he's such a pleasure to work with. Although I probably couldn't be around him for very long at any one period of time because he's always just kind of bouncing around, which I love. You know, I'm envious of
Right.
that. But he is a high energy fellow, that's for
Right.
sure. And
When you
I
get
don't.
when you get out to our age, Rip, you know, being around a high energy person is not necessarily a good thing, right?
No,
So,
it's very
but
taxing.
you know, but when I was in my 30s, like he is, that would have been fine because I could keep up with him. But you know, not anymore.
And I don't know what I was expecting. I was expecting Caleb to be an older person, and then when I met him, I thought, my gosh, this guy looks like he's like 21 or 22 years old. But he's a great guy to work with.
I'm guessing around 30. He is a great guy to work with,
Yes.
and you know, he'll do whatever he can to help you. Um, Excellent customer service. So
Yes.
yeah, we just need more people like that, you know, elsewhere.
Amen.
Yep. But
And I kind of got us off track with that, but
that's okay.
it's
Yep.
just an experience that I've had, and I know how difficult it's going to be for some folks trying to find a higher protein feed to feed their birds. If they're looking for those high end or higher protein levels in their layers, it's just not out there in a lot of places. So you kind of have to scratch around and do the best you can for your birds.
Yep. Yeah, but you definitely, whenever you're above 90 degrees or above 85, actually, with a fair amount of humidity above 60%, you really want your layers on 19, 20, 21% protein. And, you know, just especially if you want eggs. Okay. If you
Yeah.
need eggs, that's fine. You can get them through the summer on a 16%. Just don't have high expectations for performance. And they're not going to eat a lot. So they're, you know, yeah. So is there anything else on that slide you wanted to cover, Rick?
Um, let me get back here.
I mean, so if feed intake goes down, automatically your production and your egg weight and shell quality, all that's going to go right with it. So it's directly tied.
Jeff, should we be cutting back on our fat additives on our feed to reduce the energy levels?
Actually, John, no, because here's the thing. So if you break apart your different components of a feed just into the simplistic, proteins, carbs, and fats, fats have the least effect on body temperature. Proteins are the worst, and carbs are right behind them. So getting energy from fat is actually more of a stress reliever than getting energy from corn or grain or starch and carbohydrates. So yeah, definitely not the time to remove your fats.
And folks, if you're brand new to poultry and you're not really sure what some of the signs of heat stress are, if you see your birds standing around with their wings dropped down and kind of held out from the body, they're trying to cool off. You'll see them panting a lot. They don't have the ability to sweat like we do. So the only way they can get rid of body heat is through opening those wings up and trying to cool off through panting. And also their comb and wattles uh, will also serve to help dissipate their body heat just by circulating the blood through those. But if you see any of those combinations going on, you need to do something for your birds uh, before it gets too bad. I've sadly I talk to folks every year who have lost birds. I talked to one Orpington breeder. Oh gosh, it's been about 4 or 5 years ago now, who lost almost half their flock of English Orpingtons. Um, and they didn't live in a particularly hot part of the country, but they have such profuse feathering that the heat was really rough on them. So if you're raising these loose feathered birds like Orpingtons or Cochins or Brahmas, Langshans, you're basically some of your Asiatic type breeds. You need to plan ahead for these birds because they're going to have problems dealing with the heat. I can guarantee it.
Rip, people don't want to hear this, and I beat a dead horse, so to speak. But when we hit this end of July, beginning of August, it's a perfect time to mulch your birds. And here's the thing: you want to get rid of the internal fat because all it's doing is holding heat. Plus, you lowered the protein, you lowered the carbohydrates, right? So you're taking heat stress off the birds anyway, and you're limiting the amount of feed. It all comes together timing wise for a reason. Um, when you hit the hardest, now people living in the tropics with 12 hours of light and the weather's always 85 degrees, the birds don't really know when to molt. I think it's more based on the length of day, just shifting a little bit that might trigger it. But it's not as, indicative as what we have up here, in the northern hemisphere. It's completely different. But the timing for doing a molt is perfect. For most people, birds want to do it that time anyway. Hard part is, right now are all the fairs, and some of the shows, but like 4-H shows and county fairs and so on. You want your bird to be looking good, and it's tough.
It is, so many shows, particularly north of where I live, much further north, occurred during the summer, and that's the hardest time of the year to have a bird in condition to show well. Uh, you can just look at them cross-eyed, and they'll start dropping plumage, just molting like crazy. But but you're right. This is the opportune time of the year to take advantage of what would occur naturally, and just manage that molt. We've got a a video on YouTube. It's called "Managing the Molt." We did a live stream on that, and Jeff was talking to everybody through exactly the steps you need to go through to properly manage that molt and drop that excess body weight. I'm just going to echo what he said because we can't say it enough. Our birds they can overeat in a heartbeat. They can put on excess fat that they don't need. Um, if you have a bird that dies, unfortunately, and you open it up and you see all this yellow fat in there, that bird's overweight, and that was causing to the adding to the stress that bird was under, trying to lose body heat. Jeff, what about water? What can we do to encourage birds to drink more water?
Well, I uploaded the video that Carol Wilson shared with us from Grimes Cadillac, where you're using a fairly inexpensive cooler and you're putting cold water in there. And Carol's actually going out to get like the 1 gallon paint pails that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be freezing blocks of water to put in those coolers to keep that temperature cool, more throughout the day. And what I'm getting ready to say, I realize not everybody can do this, but for people that are at home all the time, throughout the day, if you can figure out how to change out your water just before the hottest part of the day. So if you eat your lunch and you go out and you actually changed your water, then you would be helping your birds out tremendously. As long as there's air movement, the birds also, so using fans, setting up your buildings, trying to get as much air movement as you can, is going to help the birds. They do perspire, so that evaporation process, if there's no air moving, the birds are just miserable no matter where they're at. So that's going to be a big help. I actually told a breeder out in California, if he could rig up his pens with recirculating water, kind of like they do in motels and other places. So you get hot water right away. In this case, you would get cold water right away. So tubing going through all the pens or all the, where the birds are, and, doing a cutout trough, but the water's constantly moving in there, because birds will chase moving water. We've all seen it, right? You dump a bucket and they're going to chase dirty water across the floor or across the ground. Friends, yeah. Well, friends of mine down here in O'Brien, Florida, they figured this out with their turkeys, right? So they'll actually use that 1/4-inch tubing, small spaghetti type tubing,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll rig that up so it just dribbles all day into a pan, right? All day it's moving. They increase their water consumption by nearly 20%. By doing that, they increase their feed consumption by almost 40%, and they knocked off grow out time for those birds. So
that's amazing. Those are pretty good numbers.
Those are really good numbers. When they figured out that the turkeys needed, they wanted running water, and he sent me a video. I should share that with you. Remind me tomorrow and I'll try and dig it up. But
Okay.
He sent me a video of that dribbling into a pan underneath, and turkeys are just reaching right up there. They're trying to get to that water source, catch it while it's in midair. It's hilarious. I mean, if you need some good redneck entertainment, this is it. Okay, no doubt.
Well, I know I've got some good friends who are into birding and bird photography of wild birds and all this kind of things, and they actually have what they call a water dribbler that attaches to the side of your bird bath, and it's just constantly dripping water. And the sound of that water, the birds just flock to it. So I can absolutely see where it worked with poultry.
I have never seen any type of poultry that didn't like to chase water. Okay?
Yeah.
I never have. And you're older than me, Rip, but you know it to be true.
Absolutely.
Right? You're thinking, you birds are stupid. I just gave you fresh water and you're chasing it across the dirty floor.
Yep.
Right? So if you can figure out a way to move water, and once they find it, you'll increase that. And if you can figure out how to cool it and move it in a recirculation system, you're going to do a lot for your birds.
Somebody on one of our groups, and I don't know whether it was a Poultry Keepers 360 Facebook group or your Poultry Breeders Nutrition group, posted a design that he had for recirculating water. And I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look to see if I could find it.
The only other one that I shared, you're right, and I don't remember who that was, but I've shared one, but it's more in like a large coop confinement for a group of layers.
Yeah.
and really he just had two 35-gallon trash cans on at both ends, and he just uses a sump pump, and he'd run it down that tube, and it'd go to the other end, and when the sump pump kicked on, it'd push it back and it just recirculated. Then he had a stock float, so the barrel never ran out of water, but he's doing that for winter water, so they never, so it helps keep it from freezing in the northern winter times.
And folks, this just occurred to me, but if you have a garden center around you that carries a lot of equipment for aquaponics and hydroponics, they're going to have some of these smaller pumps, and they're not really all that expensive. So that could be a good place to pick up one of those without paying a horrendous price for it.
I mean, if you want to get really crazy, this is what I do here. I have from a company called Pet Safe. You can find them Tractor Supply, online at Chewy, wherever, right? Pet Safe. I have a water fountain for my 3 cats and the dog, right? And I can't tell you how many times in the course of a day I watch them. They're drinking where it comes out of the fountain versus out of the bottom of the trough. Now, if she's in a hurry and she needs volume in a hurry, she'll drink out of the trough. But yeah, her and the cats, the dog and the 3 cats, they all like to drink it where it comes out of the top of that fountain. You could invest in those, and I mean, you need electric, but I swear you're going to increase your volume of water intake, and anytime you get more water in them, they're going to be healthier. Just bottom line.
What about, and we've talked about this in other situations, but would there be any benefit, to example, adding molasses to your water?
Right. And I've posted that out there. Did you put it on Poultry Keepers 360? I know I put it on Poultry Breeder Nutrition, but basically, the poultry electrolyte, and you can use it for anything. I shouldn't just say it's for poultry. Here's the thing. It's 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon of cooking molasses or blackstrap molasses. Great about, and this is per gallon of water, and great about a teaspoon of fresh ginger and about a teaspoon of salt, right? Mix that up really good and serve it. And, I think, John, aren't you doing that?
You just described what I drink every day and give to my chickens when it's appropriate. I try not to give it to them all the time.
I quit using the word switchel because people thought it was some sort of voodoo,
Well, I found out there's an alcoholic drink, Haymaker's Punch, that they also called switchel, that's loosely based on the same flavor profile.
Right. But if you look up homemade switchel, the base formula is what I just gave you per gallon. And don't put the lid on when you put the ginger and everything in there, because it's going to fizz up. It actually gets a little fizzy, like a carbonated soft drink, and it's fine. But just don't put the lid on too tight. You could have an accident. Oh. But the birds are going to love it, right? And when it's really hot, you can make this up 3-4 days ahead of time. It's not going to spoil. It's really simple. But as far as heat stress, it's phenomenal.
When I use it, I empty my waterers on a daily basis because I was worried about bacteria buildup because of the excess sugar.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're
really not that much of a concern.
Yeah, if you used it today and tomorrow you just went in and put in fresh water, I'm good. I'm good with that. Okay. Just depends on how often you're doing it. But when you're above 90, 95 degrees, or your heat index is above 90, man, I could see doing it at least 3 or 4 times a week. And as soon as you serve it, you're going to see the energy level of the birds pick up within an hour. I mean, it is phenomenal how much difference it makes. I know how much of a difference it makes when I drink it. Okay. It's crazy. It's a real energy boost. I was calling it chicken Gatorade for a little while, but that's not really fair. Switchel is hard for people to understand or Google it. So I don't know, but the recipe's out there, Poultry Breeder Nutrition Group. And Rip, you can grab it and put it on the other.
I did.
If you haven't.
I was
Okay.
trying to think back, but yeah, I did.
Yeah. Phenomenal stuff. But, cool water, lots of shade. Try
Is
and capture as much
garlic going to
moving
help
air.
this time of year?
So here's my thing with garlic is I like to hold it back and only use it when I have an illness. Okay. So if I suspect I have an infection in the bird, that's when I want to really get after the garlic. To use it kind of prophylactically or just use it, because it's awesome stuff, I lose the benefits, when it comes time to treat an illness. So you need to make that personal decision on your own. Do you want to reserve it for an emergency or do you want to use it all the time? There's nothing wrong with using it all the time. I have nothing against it, but you know that you need to bruise it and you need to let it change from that creamy white to more of a brown, right? It'll get dark when you bruise it and then slice it up because you want to release the internal compound known as allicin, okay? And the allicin is the true benefits behind garlic.
What about vitamin or mineral supplements? Anything you would suggest there? I've heard all sorts of things, but never tried any.
I'm not opposed to them. Here's the thing is all the electrolyte packs that you buy at Tractor Supply, Jeffers Supply, everywhere online, if you look at them and read the label closely, right? Potassium chloride, magnesium chloride, sodium chloride, okay?
They're loaded with salt.
All those are salts. And, too much salt. So you don't run those every day and you don't run them over their recommended levels. But, just don't, because you're going to, that much salt, you could do damage to the kidneys, right? And you could also actually have some salt burn, in the digestive tract. So you use those when you're under like severe stress and you don't have anything else, then go ahead and use them. People are addicted to those things. It's crazy how many people give them electrolytes, give them electrolytes, give them electrolytes.
That's one of the first things I hear.
And I cringe. It's like, no, please don't. Just give them the chicken Gatorade, and maybe we need to call that Chicken Aid or something. I don't know. We need to give it a name, but and just get it out there for people. It's so much. It's simple. Once you have the molasses, and every kitchen should have the vinegar, right? Every kitchen has the salt. The only thing that you got to get is the ginger. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know this 100%, but I would think you could grate the whole ginger root and take your teaspoon, put the rest in a jar, and probably put it in the freezer and not really lose. If you were cooking with it, you would lose flavor. But for this purpose of the switchel or the chicken aid, I don't think you'd lose the benefits. But I don't know the properties of ginger frozen.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's the aroma or the flavor of the ginger, or there's some thing that's in there. I would say, mix it in with your salt and let the salts absorb that. And then you could
take two. If you went even amounts, then you could just go 2 teaspoons of the salt. Yeah.
Or just take your bruised lump of ginger and throw it in the container with the salt and let it absorb that. If that's what they're after.
I think it's more than the scent. I really do think there's a compound in the ginger that is giving an energy boost, whether it's vitamin or other. I don't know. But there's definitely an unusual taste when you, with and without the ginger in the switchel. So
I notice it. I use candied ginger because getting fresh ginger here out in the hinterlands is difficult. And from my own internal health, I notice the difference.
Yeah, you just start growing some.
I can do ginseng here. I can't do ginger.
Really? Not even in the greenhouse with the chickens?
If I can keep the chickens from eating it.
I hardly think they'd eat it. I
don't either.
It's a root or rhizome underneath the ground.
Right.
But, sometimes I marvel at what chickens will and won't do, and they'll prove me a liar every time. I just had a question and totally forgot what it was.
Welcome to your 70s, Rip. Welcome to your 70s.
That's just because I'm older than you, Jeff.
I had a question. We've been having horrendous rains for weeks on end, and everything is just soaked here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed in the local poultry groups, we've seen an increase in respiratory problems, and I'm expecting to see a rise in feed and mold related issues. Anything we can do to stay ahead of this curve?
Big thing is chickens aren't ducks, and they don't like wet feet. So when you get really soggy ground or wet environment, throwing in a pallet or something for them to get up off the ground for a significant part of the day and or night, right? So for people that may not have roost, for sure, but they need the opportunity to get up off the ground. Not a good time to be spilling feed on the ground because it's going to start fermenting really quick, and you don't want that. So you need to be careful. But truthfully, people, when it gets horrible rains like you guys have been having up there, John, everybody kind of buttons up their chicken coop, but they don't reopen it for airflow soon enough. Okay. So, the day after the rain or as soon as you can, open it up as much as you can and let it air out. Okay. Just get as much moisture out of that coop. Fresh bedding, definitely key. Just anything to get them separated from moisture.
I was actually thinking of putting in almost like a wire drop through floor in my coop just to get the poultry up out of their litter and manure because it is so damp. I went out and used some peat moss, which is awesome, and it instantly corrected that little hint of ammonia smell I was starting to pick up. But yeah, it's tough right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be, like I said, they don't tolerate wet, wet feet and high humidity environments. And of course, after the rain, the temperatures go up and the humidity in any confined space is going to be horrible. So as much as you can do to get good airflow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would maybe putting an oscillating fan in the coop, or would that be too much?
I would just put a single directional fan, across the top, pulling out the top air.
Okay.
Right. And that's going to naturally draft up, right? It's going to pull up so I would just like a 20-inch box fan, up in the gable or up in the peak, just let her go, just get as much airflow as you can get. I mean, you can tilt it down a little bit if you're in the 90s, if your temperatures are getting insane up there, which you were talking in the pre-show that, you actually had to fire up the pellet stove. So temperature isn't an issue at the moment, but then you would put that fan down closer to the bedding, right? So the chickens can get the full effect of the fan, and drying out the bedding. So you have to make a determination based on temperature where you're going to put that ventilation.
Jeff,
You need to win the mega ball,
Right.
the Mega Millions tonight, John. Then you can put what they call a BA fan, a big ass fan in there. You can move all the air you want to move. You can have, a horse size arena. Right?
Those things are incredible.
They are.
I just need my 30 by 20 poultry house built.
Right.
But, that's future expansion possibilities.
Yeah. But you need to put 2 6-foot, super fans in there. They're low speed, but they just the way their blades are designed and how long they are, they can move air.
So some are like the round tops that I used to see on restaurants in the old days. They'd put those round bonnets on the top of their exhaust fans, so they would always be turning no matter what. We're going back to the 1970s now, so it's arcane technology.
They used to put those on all the old barns around here too, so they would just let heat out. Those were called cupolas, and they would just naturally, vent heat and allow airflow out the roof. And it's amazing how much of a difference a cupola makes in an enclosed structure. It's phenomenal. It's truly amazing. So, all right, Rip, what do you want to get through tonight?
Let's talk about, we've covered heat stress, but what about some other types of stress that our birds can experience? I know one thing that comes to mind is when you start mixing flocks together and introducing different ages of birds together. That can be a stressful situation.
Before you even bring the slide up, Rip, people need to know anytime you make a significant change or a change to a bird's environment, feed, water location, housing, new birds, all that, everything, it's all stress. We just don't understand it, right? You know,
Right.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have stress just because our friends come over to visit, but and intermix our flock. But I could tell you that my mother did. Whenever somebody was coming to visit, she did the flight of the bumblebee, had to clean the house from top to bottom, right? She was a nervous wreck until they were there for about a half hour. So, you know, your hens are pretty much the same way.
Yes.
You just don't want to disrupt their social order, but we
And
do
then
it as breeders because we have to. But anyway,
they pick up on the smallest thing,
the
smallest change.
smallest thing.
It's absolutely incredible.
Believe it or not, if you wore the same pair of jeans and the same shirt every day to feed your chickens, and one day you come out there and change colors,
Oh yeah, they flip out.
they get so used to, they have a routine and they don't want to, so people need to get ready because fall's right around the corner.
Yeah.
And the mites and the lice are going to be looking for a home. Now, really common, probably most of the people that will watch this have had it or experienced it, or if you haven't, it'll happen. Just a matter of time. When I had my flock, I'm pretty sure it was from sparrows and cowbirds and wild birds coming down, eating and drinking, where the flock was. It was pretty simple for me. I cut off one of those plastic 55-gallon barrels, made it, about 12, 14 inches deep. And I filled it half full of ashes. And, of course, up here in the north, we get ashes from coal or wood. I don't know what you guys in the south are going to do, but you can make a mixture of peat moss, diatomaceous earth. But there isn't an exact recipe. Somebody's probably saying, oh, I got to get that recipe. Just throw in some peat moss, throw in a feed scoop of diatomaceous earth and feed it, throw in a half a scoop of powdered sulfur, mix it up. And don't get fussy about mixing it up, because once the hens figure out what's in that barrel, they'll mix it for you.
Yep.
And I tell you, I'd go out to manage, I'd go out to feed and water the chickens after work when I get home. There's nothing funnier than my daughter's Brahma. She had a white Brahma, and she was the boss at the coop, and she would be in that dust bath and buried all the way to the bottom of her eyes. I'm not lying, right? She's buried. She'd stand up and they kind of take this ghostly appearance because they got all that dust on them and that ash. And they get really perturbed at you if you interrupt their dust bath. I'm telling you, they just don't do it, right? So, in this barn, which was out in Wisconsin, that hen, when I got too close to the barrel, she was not happy because I interrupted her day at the spa, so to speak. Yeah.
Yep.
But it works great. I know people talk about using ivermectin and, all these other externals, and that's fine. But the more and more that we use those things, the less and less effective they're going to be, because they're getting into the environment and the insects are becoming tolerant to them. So you need to start. I'm not saying never use ivermectin, but maybe one time you want to use, I think it's called Elector, right? Yeah. Elector something.
Yeah, Elector PSP, I think.
Right. And, sometime maybe you want to use a pyrethrin. Maybe then you want to, so rotate what you're using. This slows down, the adaptation of the insects and the internal parasites by, changing up what you're treating with.
Yep.
But it's too easy to go buy ivermectin, right? And I get a kick out of people buy it for sheep or cattle, and then they post somewhere out there on a poultry group, how do I figure out how much to use for my chickens? I just sit back and laugh. It's like, it wasn't really made for chickens, folks. I mean, last time I looked, there's no label for chickens, but or nothing on the label for chickens.
Yeah. Jeff, you asked what we do in the South. Uh, we don't have wood ashes and we don't have coal ashes, so we do without. About the best combination I found is some fine white builder sand
Yep.
and some sulfur, maybe some diatomaceous earth, and that's worked pretty good for me over the years.
Yeah, I mean, the sulfur and the diatomaceous earth are your key ingredients.
Right.
So the sand is just a carrier.
Mhm.
It's still an irritant to, to the mite, to the external parasite, but the true active ingredients are the sulfur and the diatomaceous earth.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the peat moss, and here's why. When it starts getting matted down or it doesn't look fresh anymore, then, you can take it in the coop and add it to the bedding in there. And you're, even with the sulfur and diatomaceous earth, and you're adding a layer of protection, as far as the bedding in the coop. One less place for the mites and lice to, live and hang out waiting for a chicken. Just the way I think about it anyway.
That makes sense to me. See, we got the next slide here. Adding birds to the flock. I mentioned that earlier, but
Yeah. Yeah,
this is something that
people love to do it. I love it. They go to swap meets or something and they pick up chickens, or, they just go, they go to their friends, they go to a swap meet, they go to a show, and, well, you want to quarantine them before you mix them because you don't know what you're bringing in.
Exactly.
2, keep them in a cage where, maybe they can see each other for a week or so. And if you're in a hurry and you want to see World War IV, then, go ahead and put them in there, but it's going to be ugly. There's going to be a lot of carnage. So you can sneak them in once they've gone to roost at night. So if they go to roost at, let's say, 9 o'clock, if you go out there about 10:30 or 11 o'clock before they're fully asleep, you can put the new bird on the roost. Don't turn on the lights. Just go out there with a headlamp or something small, like a red headlamp. Put them on the roost. In the morning, you need to be there when they wake up and they come out, right? Just make sure nobody's killing each other. And partly depends on breed.
Yes.
My black Australorps were pack hunters, and you put a new bird in there, chances are it wasn't going to live long. So yeah, you just put it on the roost somewhere in an open spot, and I already talked about socializing. There's a product out there that is botanical, so it comes from herbs. It's called Box Rescue Remedy. You can put a few drops in their drinking water for a few days. That'll help. Inside the coop, try and reduce the amount of total light. So you want enough for them to move around, but you don't want enough for them to. Light intensity stimulates cannibalizing and fighting. So kind of keep it really muted, low light. I think you'll be a lot happier with that.
Very good. Wormers, heavy internal parasites can also stress birds. Heavy loads of those parasites, and they've got some excellent advice here on how to worm your bird.
Well, that's what I worry about with John up there with the ground being so wet. Just keep an eye on them. Do your fecals like once a week, once every 2 weeks, just to see where you're at. Just had a large flock in California. All of a sudden birds started dying and production went from, 80, 85, 90% production down into the 40s.
Whoa.
Right? And that was over the course of about 2 to 3 weeks. He was just losing eggs. Finally, we cut some open and they were just full of roundworms, right? So we're trying to manage that out there. Natural wormers, you can mix equal amounts of garlic, cayenne, diatomaceous earth by volume, equal amounts by volume. If you want, you can add a little bit of milk or molasses to it just to encourage them to eat it. Not a lot. Don't get carried away. I'm trying to get about a teaspoon in every bird per day. Run it 7 to 10 days, 2 weeks, right? They can't taste hot. So people that are thinking cayenne, what do I want to do cayenne? They can't. The chicken doesn't have the taste buds or the sensors in the mouth or the tongue to know what capsation is. So it's not a problem. They don't really care. And actually, we make this mix and sell it at Futrell. And the reason I say that is we used to sell it in tubes for horses and other animals. One day I was at a little small gathering for some horse people and squeezed some out, on a little 6-inch paper plate. And I actually tasted it. And it wasn't bad at all. It sounds worse than it really is. I probably could have put it on a taco and been pretty happy. So it wasn't bad at all. And I said taco because it's John's fault. He keeps showing pictures of tacos.
I know it.
And I want tacos really bad. But,
Okay. Next June.
huh? Next June? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cleaning out every year. Well, okay. Just to finish up on molding, make sure you clean out your coop at least twice a year. It's important to do it when your ground temperature is about 55 degrees, both spring and fall. Okay. That's when your parasite activity level is most active, 55 to 65. Once it starts getting above 70, they're not coming up the plant. They're not as active. So for us here in Pennsylvania, again, I'm looking at tax day and probably around the 1st of October. And, but you can get those digital thermometers and you can measure, what the ground temperature is. But somewhere in that time frame is what I'm looking at. Look, we were talking about molding earlier, and birds are trying to molt right now. I mean, it's just what they're doing. So, it's designed to be roughly a 45 to 60 day break for the hen. It's just part of their system. It's part of their, it's predetermined plan, or, just go with it, or actually control it. It would be my, make the feed change, getting them down to a high fiber. Now, what Rip pulled off earlier said not to feed high fiber, but I'm a fan of basically the diet being 50 to 60% oats, whole oats, vitamins, minerals, very little protein, lots of oyster shell, lots of grit. Heavy birds, 3 to 4 ounces, 4-pound birds, 2 ounces. But be careful not to overfeed. Got to have enough room for everybody. If they don't go into the molt, you can consider withholding feed and water for 24 hours just to trigger it. And that should get any stubborn hens to start molting. So depending on your birds and how much internal fat they have, trying to lose anywhere from 10 to 20% of their body weight, trying to get them back down to pullet weight, right? And we were trying to collect that information and find out what pullet weight should be. Didn't get very far. Got some, but didn't get very far. But yeah, I need to change that. So molting hens right after Christmas, not really a great idea. I would say, July, August, if you're not doing shows, get them away from breeding season. And so I need to adjust that. Now for commercial flocks, I like to do them, right after Christmas. And the reason being is we always have too many eggs, table eggs, right over, the end of December. Once we get past Christmas into February, eggs always get long. There's too many eggs on the market. So, and it's also a good time to use natural light to stimulate them back into production, once we get past Christmas. So it just kind of works together with a natural plan.
Yeah, I think we got one more slide of nest boxes.
Yeah, it's really hard to get people convinced that their hens want privacy curtains on their nest boxes, and I don't know why. I don't know why. This is like one of the most difficult things I try and tell people. You don't want more than one hen in a nest box at any time. You're just asking for trouble, right? And she's looking for, the hen's looking for somewhere around 9-10 o'clock in the morning or earlier, but she's looking for the darkest place in the coop to lay her egg. Now, I'll bet anyone that listens to this, if I said, how many of you ever found eggs in the corner, right, of the coop? right? Everybody's hand's going to go up. Well, something's wrong. Either the nest box is too high off the ground. She doesn't feel like she has the privacy. It's not in the right place. So you need to go look in your coop and determine in the morning between 7 and 10, where's the darkest place in your coop where those hens are going to want to lay those eggs, right? And that's where your nest box needs to be, not where it's convenient for you. I don't care what you think. It doesn't matter. It's what the hen wants, okay?
Exactly.
At the end
right.
of the day, it's all about the chicken. And if you lose sight of that, you're just going to have pain and suffering. Now, when you put curtains on, hens go in, lay their egg, they leave. They don't want to be in there for an extended period of time. So when I go into a hen house and I see hens in the middle of the day just lounging around in a nest box,
That's not good.
no, it's not good at all, right? What else are they going to be doing in there? They're going to be, depositing manure. That's a great opportunity for birds to start eating eggs or pecking eggs,
Yep.
right? The eggs are going to get trampled. They're going to be dirtier eggs. This was actually an Amish customer in Wisconsin, right? A town called Cashton, Wisconsin. His name was Chester Schmucker. For 5 or 6 years, I told Chester, I said, Chester, you really got to get curtains on your nest boxes. I know. He says, I know. I just never get it done. So one year I went in there. I always go see him in February. One year I went in there. I was like, Chester, you put curtains on your nest boxes. He goes, he got a big old smile on his face, as my dad used to say, a shit-eating grin. And he goes, that's the best thing I ever did. I go, how come, Chester? He goes, I only wash half as many eggs as I used to. I wanted to smack him in the back of his head right then. Just,
And you were talking about curtains on the nest boxes. Years ago, when you bought a galvanized nest box, they came with curtains installed.
yeah. And now they're optional. You can still get them. And people don't buy them because they don't see the need for them. Right. But
Is there something to the red color on the curtain?
well, the
I've
newer
noticed.
ones like hen gear and so on, they're using red. Red is a natural attractant color for a hen. So there is some attraction to it. So what you do with these, if you look really close, is you take those. This is nothing more than pond liner, the black or rubber pond liner. You take the flap and you actually roll it up and tuck it in behind itself above. And so when you have pullets and you're training them to the nest boxes before they start laying, they're curious where they're going to start laying. So this gives them a chance to go in, check it out, get comfortable with it. Once you start seeing eggs in there, then you just slowly start dropping flaps, right? And they're going to keep going back there because of habit and routine. So here you can lift the flaps up, get them out of the way so they can check out the nest boxes. Not too many people listening, to the show are going to be using these type of nest boxes. I get it, but the curtains are still just as important. And putting it in the darkest place in the hen house at 9 to 10 a.m. is still just as important. Okay. I can't say that enough. It doesn't. So
The thing that gets me is I see so many pictures of vegetable crate nest boxes, and there's no top, there's no sides on them, and then they wonder why their birds they lay on the floor of the coop.
yeah. Or I see 5-gallon buckets that are 4 feet off the ground, or all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I see milk crates, vegetable crates, all that stuff. If people would go out and spend more time observing what their birds are doing, it wouldn't be nearly the issue. So
It's interesting that you bring that up, Jeff, because in reading through some of the old poultry journals and magazines, and just reading some of the articles written by the old major breeders like Barred Rocks and Rhode Island Reds and White Leghorns, those guys and ladies spent a huge amount of time, really, compared to what we do today, just sitting in the coop and watching their birds.
Well, look, it's therapeutic for you, and it's also therapeutic for the chicken. I was having this conversation with one of our dealers from North Carolina, Reedy Fork Farm.
Mm-hmm.
and I was recapping the field trial that we did on turkeys. So my intern, every day we had 2 groups of turkeys, 25 in each group, right? Thanksgiving and Christmas. So Christmas got food, water, bedding change, but that's it. They got no extra interaction whatsoever, right? Just like typical, taking care of birds.
Mhm.
Thanksgiving, we told everybody in the office, you can go out and hug turkeys all you want, play with them, pick them up, whatever. And she dedicated 20 minutes a day to being out there interacting with them, talking to them, singing to them, whatever, petting them, playing with them. Pictures of her with turkey sitting on top of her head, sitting on her shoulder, sitting on her lap. When they got bigger, when they're getting close to processing, when she'd go sit, she'd flip her bucket over and sit in the coop out of the sun. They'd line up like children at story time in a circle around her, right? So here's the thing. When we got done, when we processed them at 13 and a half weeks old, there was 1 more pound of carcass in the birds that got human interaction than there was with the birds that did not. 1 pound, okay, finish weight. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're working with, production people, commercially or, on a larger scale, when you're selling your turkey for $4.95 a pound, that's an extra $4.95 on every turkey.
Right.
So that's a big number. All animals respond to human interaction, and you just got to take your time and enjoy them. They'll enjoy you just as much as you enjoy them. And if you don't enjoy them, get rid of them.
That's right. And Jeff, that makes a perfect segue because I found a picture of something that would make observing your flock much more easy. It's more pleasurable. It's climate controlled. It's portable, and y'all need to build you one of these things, and that's a self-contained air-conditioned cabin on your John Deere tractor mower, complete with a generator and an air conditioner plugged in the back of that thing. So go out and get one of those things. I'm sorry, I just couldn't help myself.
I know. We wondered why that was on the screen when we logged in. I knew you had a plan for that picture somewhere.
Well, folks, we're getting down to about our 1 hour mark. But before we go, I would be remiss if I also didn't remind you of the Poultry Keepers podcast. We just uploaded a new episode this morning at 4 a.m. I wasn't uploading it, but I did schedule it to come on at 4 a.m. But a lot of folks listening. We've got listeners in the Caribbean. We've got listeners in Australia. We've got listeners in Europe. So a lot of listeners, mostly in America and Canada. I recently found out that our podcast is rated number 18 in the do-it-yourself category for the nation of Canada. So relatively proud of that John and I have been able to rack up a few points in that area.
Must be the Chanticleers.
Yeah.
Hey, we actually have a listener tonight from Sweden, so we keep reaching out there. So it's great.
And we've got a bunch from the Philippines, a bunch from Burma. It's when we first started this, Jeff, you may have an inkling of what was coming. I did not. I did not expect that kind of outreach and participation. It blows my mind every time I take a look at where everybody's from. But folks, we have enjoyed it. We hope you have enjoyed it. We hope you've given you some great food for thought to help get your birds through stress, especially heat stress. But before I go, I'm gonna any of you folks got anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just want people to realize they can always message us or post on all of the groups, Poultry Keepers 360, Poultry Breeder Nutrition. And look, if I missed it because you're in a different time zone, just, send it again. Okay. Be persistent. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Okay. I got to sleep sometime.
Yes, indeed. Well, boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen, until next time, Keep enjoying your birds, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.